Brano community, there is more than 100 rice field workers killed by suspected Boko Haram insurgents. Millions of Nigerians spent Sunday in total blackout as national power grid collapses. In international news, hospitals in the U.S. face financial burdens as coronavirus second wave hits with a vengeance. And in sport, Maradona laid to rest in Argentina amid fan adulation.
This is ANN News.
Borno State is still reeling today over the suspected Boko Haram beheading of at least 110 rice field workers near the Borno State capital of Maiduguri on Saturday. Many others were injured. State Governor Babagana Zulum led residents in mass burials on Sunday as President Muhammadu Buhari condemned the attack. Buhari said, quote, "The entire country is hurt by these senseless killings," end quote. Many of the victims are said to have traveled from Sokoto State to the northeast to find work harvesting in the rice fields. More than 100 of them ended up being killed by suspected insurgents. Some are reported missing and are believed to have been kidnapped by the jihadists. Millions of Nigerians spent most of Sunday in total blackouts as the nation's power grid collapsed. Some households have even begun their journey in the dark a few days before. Eco Electricity Distribution Company and the Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company confirmed the crash of the national grid in separate messages to their customers. Power was restored in most states late Sunday night. It was only last weekend and reported an announcement by the Transmission Company of Nigeria that it would need 1 trillion naira to stabilize the national grid. The company's executive director, Victor Adewumi, had said its internally generated funds and the federal government's inflows into the company are not enough. Adewumi said there was still at least a 600 billion naira shortfall. The national grid had collapsed late last year and twice this year as well. 82 new cases of coronavirus were confirmed in the country on Sunday. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control reports 48 of those cases were confirmed in Lagos. The only closest state to that is Rivers with 8 cases. The rest of the new cases were shared by 9 other states. NCDC figures put the country's total confirmed cases at 64,412, while 63,055 of those have been discharged. Their total stands at 1,173. NCDC says those discharged on Sunday include 136 community recoveries in Lagos State managed in line with guidelines. Not everyone is on board with the plan by the private sector coalition against COVID-19 proposed 100 billion naira fund to rehabilitate all 44 damaged and destroyed police stations during the nationwide EndSARS protest. News Agency of Nigeria, NAN, reports some had commended the initiative, while others say it is a case of misplaced priority. NAN says COVID had presented a 100 billion naira equipment support plan to retool the Nigeria police force in the next 2 years. The plan had received support from the Bankers Committee that says it plans to back government's efforts to rebuild confidence in the nation's economy in the aftermath of the violence that marked the end of the protest. One executive who supports the plan is quoted as saying, "This philanthropic gesture is expected of some of the group's members." Another corporate chief executive says Nigerians should insist on transparency in the COVID intervention. He says all transactions from the fund should be scrutinized, pointing out the history of failing banks in Nigeria and economic crises have created a mystery around the COVID intervention. In order to bring the value of the Nigerian currency closer to the exchange rate unification policy recommended by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, The central bank has devalued the currency by 6 naira to the dollar. With this, international money transfer service operators, bureau de change operators and service providers have been instructed to add 6 naira to all rates. In a weekly update from CBN's Trade and Exchange Department, the new exchange rate for the disbursement of international money transfer operators receipts becomes effective today, Monday to Friday. It appears Nigeria is in no hurry to reopen its borders. The Minister of Agriculture, Mohammed Sabo Nanono, has declared Nigeria's borders will remain locked and has reported the key would be thrown into the lagoon. Nanono made the statement over the weekend in Kebbi State, where agricultural produce was distributed to farmers affected by the recent flood in the state. He explained that the federal government was not ready to reopen the borders so as to boost the country's agricultural sector. Chairman Senate Committee on Aviation, Senator Adamu Alero, also agrees with the continued border closure, which he says would encourage the growth of localized farming. He commended federal and state governments for supporting flood victims in the state. Deputy Governor, retired Colonel Ismail Yombe Dabal, who represented the Governor, Senator Atiku Bagudu Abubakar, thanked the federal government for the kind gesture. Rice, guinea corn, and beans were among the produce distributed to farmers. We'll be right back after the short break.
The city slept. We installed a board in the middle of a park with something special hidden inside. We wondered if people would notice. They didn't, so we invited Nigerians to add their polls to the scene, whichever way they chose to. Some literally added their own polls. Some sang, others rapped, and even recited poetry. As they added their polls, the board came alive. Hidden figures broke free from obscurity, inspired by the crowd expressing themselves.
You know you can't do anything.
Because why blend in when you can stand out? NTN polls. Do you? Dial star 406 hash to join.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has declared the end of military operations in Tigray after announcing the capture of the region's capital of Mekelle. Although it is difficult to confirm the claims because of the government's communication blackout, the Prime Minister said the army had entered the city and is fully in control of Mekelle. The leader of the Tigray People's Liberation Front has a different message. He has vowed in a statement to Reuters news agency the TPLF will, quote, fight to the last. The conflict has reportedly claimed hundreds of lives and has displaced thousands since it began earlier this month. Abiy had accused the regional party of attacking an Ethiopian army command headquarters in Mekelle. As a result of reported sporadic gunshots on Sunday, some residents are said to have fled the city. The U.S. Embassy in neighboring Eritrea has reported 6 explosions were heard in Asmara, the capital, late on Saturday. Tigrayan forces have a beef against Eritrea. They accuse the country of supporting Ethiopian forces in the conflict. The Prime Minister said in a Twitter statement the government has completed and ceased military operations in the Tigray region. He also said federal forces would continue apprehending TPLF leaders and bring them to the court of law. A 5-day official mourning period ended in South Africa on Sunday for those who have died of the coronavirus or those who are victims of gender-based violence in the country. Correspondent Yelisa Injamela reports.
This nation's soul can only renew itself if a better commitment is made to put an end to gender-based violence. That's according to South Africa's Deputy President, David Mabuza. Mabuza was speaking at the official commemoration ceremony for the 16 Days of Activism campaign against gender-based violence and femicide. The 16 Days campaign is meant to galvanize action to end violence against women and girls. This year's ceremony also served as a rallying call to commemorate the thousands of people who lost their lives to COVID-19.
As we deal with the dark cloud of COVID-19, the chilling pain of gender-based violence and femicide cuts very deep into the core foundation of our national consciousness.
South Africa has the dubious honor of having a femicide rate 5 times higher than the global average. This situation was exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. More cases of gender-based violence were reported during the lockdown period, a lockdown period that was necessitated by the need to curb the spread of the pandemic. In order to honor and remember all those who have lost their lives, President Cyril Ramaphosa directed that the nation embark on 5 days of mourning for the victims of COVID-19 and gender-based violence. During this period, the national flags will be flown at half-mast throughout the country from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
There's still more work ahead of us. COVID-19 continues to be part of our lives. We should continue to be vigilant and ensure that we continue to adhere to COVID-19 protocols. The reported rising number of infections remains a cause for concern for all of us. We should continue to behave responsibly to save lives and avoid any possible resurgence of COVID-19 infections that may result in further loss of lives.
Mabuza further pleaded with the South African society at large to do more in calling out acts of gender-based violence. The presidency is now urging society to collectively rally behind government programs to promote advancement and development of children and women.
A collective of Tunisian non-governmental organization has filed a judicial complaint against the importation of waste from Italy. The issue has sparked a widespread national scandal, and the waste importation has been described as ecological terrorism. Respondent Adnin Chaochi reports.
The Green Tunisia Network, which brings together more than 100 active NGOs, threatened to file a complaint before the International Court of Justice and the European Court of Human Rights in the case of waste imported from Italy.
This is a national security issue. The Italian state has violated the sovereignty of Tunisia's national territory, given that this activity is harmful to the environment and human health.
Environmental experts explain that the Tunisian company annually imports nearly 120,000 tons of waste from Italy and receives 48 euros for each ton. Activists accuse the Environment Department, as well as the Italian and the Tunisian companies, of ecological terrorism.
The Tunisian company which is involved in this scandal did not act on its own. It has Italian partners and Tunisian state officials who turned a blind eye to this unprecedented environmental catastrophe. All people who authorize the import of waste from Italy will be held to account.
The Minister of Environment and Local Affairs informed the head of state that he ordered an investigation into the scandal. Authorities declared that 70 containers of waste have been sealed, pending the return to Italy, while 212 containers are still at the port of Sousse.
The export from the port in Italy was made with fake documents because the Tunisian importing company declared the containers were full of recyclable plastic waste, which is not true. The investigation is underway. The ministry did not grant any authorization. It will take all appropriate legal measures to address this kind of abuse.
Tunisia is a signatory to several international waste conventions. They are mainly the Basel Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movements of Hazardous Wastes and their Disposal, and the Bamako Convention on the ban on the import into Africa of hazardous wastes and on the control of transboundary movements and management of hazardous wastes within Africa. The Tunisian law clearly regulates the field of waste disposal. Therefore, it is strictly prohibited to import hazardous waste into the North African state. Environmental activists hope that the case will not be treated and classified as an ordinary customs offense.
When we return, international news. Hospitals in the U.S. face financial burdens as coronavirus second wave hits with a vengeance. And later, sport. Maradona laid to rest in Argentina amid fan adulation.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. The United States is surely not experiencing the best of times right now. A second wave of the new coronavirus is battering the country with more than 13 million cases and more than 270,000 deaths. Hospitals are near a breaking point. Severe staffing and bed shortages are crippling efforts to treat a record-breaking swell of coronavirus patients. Correspondent Dan Williams reports from Chicago.
Medical staff at the new Roseland Hospital on Chicago's far south side are once again rushing to the front line, stepping up to care for those impacted by a fresh surge in positive COVID-19 cases. But the second spike in Chicago has again exposed the hospital's fragile finances. Roseland is a so-called safety net hospital, providing care to low-income, uninsured and vulnerable populations. For years, the hospital has suffered from a lack of investment.
Budget-wise, financially, a safety net hospital is always in the red. So it's not a matter of, what's the profit margin. It's how you deal with the debt structure. Now, we've taken on a lot more debt. We've taken on a lot of construction projects. We've added a lot more staff. So we are just literally managing our debt on a minute-by-minute basis.
We first visited the hospital in April, in the middle of the first wave of the pandemic. Despite developing an in-house COVID-19 testing program, the hospital did not qualify for any of the $12 billion in federal funds aimed at helping hospitals survive the pandemic, as it hadn't met one of the criteria, admitting 100 COVID-19 patients by April 10th. Roseland Hospital is situated in one of Chicago's poorest neighborhoods. Years of disinvestment have led to high unemployment and crime rates, while much of the area is considered to be a food desert.
You know, it's sad when your zip code determines your health outcome and not your genetic code. It's been proven time and time again that communities like Roseland have been underfunded and resources have not been shifted to the front lines that we deserve here in an underserved, divested-in community.
Roseland has the capacity to expand to cope with the new surge, but that will need further funding and resources. Roseland Hospital, along with many other so-called safety net hospitals, was already struggling financially even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. The coronavirus has only brought further strain, and Roseland administrators say the hospital is now in dire need of more funding. Roseland operates on a $50 million annual budget. Although the hospital has received some extra funding to cope with the pandemic, its CEO says it's not enough to cover the hospital's outlay.
Quite frankly, safety net hospitals don't have enough resources to fight this battle. And my position will always remain strong that we need the federal government, the state government to step in and give us the resources we need to help battle COVID-19.
In the meantime, the staff here continue to focus on the task at hand, battling a new surge of COVID-19 cases. Longer term, despite the pandemic underlining its value to the community, the future of this hospital remains uncertain.
The United States is not alone in dealing with the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. European countries, some Asian countries, and other parts of the world are sharing the same experiences. Pakistan has even announced on Thursday the closure of all education institutions until January. Correspondent Daniel Khan reports.
In recent weeks, Pakistan's COVID-19 cases and deaths have seen a sharp increase. The National Command and Operations Center says hospitalizations have doubled in the last 2 weeks, while the positivity ratio has increased to 7.46%. There is an increase in the number of infections reported at educational institutions across the country, with 19% of total COVID-19 cases being recorded among teachers and students. Following a high-level meeting, the NCOC has decided to close all schools, colleges and universities.
Educational institutions had faced a 6-month closure from March to September due to COVID-19, and now in the pandemic's second spell, Education Ministry officials say the closure had become imminent due to the rising number of cases.
Experts say the lockdowns due to the pandemic have brought about a sense of fear and anxiety for children.
The school is a place where children learn and have fun simultaneously, but due to this pandemic, as you know, that they cannot shake hands, they cannot play together, no game time, no music time, so only academics are going on these days. So this part is really missing, and that affects the children very much.
For teachers, the biggest challenge has been switching to online classes.
The major issue for the online classes was the distraction of the students during the online class because they were sitting in the homely environment, and the home environment is totally different from the class environment. So this was the issue that we were facing in the online classes.
According to the World Journal of Pediatrics, the pandemic may continue to have increased long-term adverse consequences on children.
Coronavirus is a dangerous disease. It's a virus, but it can make you it makes you sick. I am a bit scared, but sometimes when I get outside, I get the scariest dreams ever. I stay inside home. I wear mask and gloves when I go outside. And I wash my hands for 20 minutes.
As intensive care units across Pakistan are nearing capacity, the second and a far deadlier wave of the coronavirus is building momentum. The National Command and Operations Center says violation of SOPs is the main reason behind this increasing trend, and if people continue to ignore these preventive measures, then the country may face the worst situation in the coming weeks.
Up next, sports. Maradona laid to rest in Argentina amid fan adulation. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, Golden Eaglets former captain Sani Abacha is crying foul after being dropped from the Flying Eagles under-20 squad to the AFCON Zona qualifiers in Benin. Officials were said to have complained about his attitude. Abacha was only recently signed by Humber Budapest of Hungary when he turned 18. Some said, although team officials had accused Abacha of poor attitude, Abacha himself had said he was not surprised to be dropped because he was not given a decent chance in the team. Argentine football icon Diego Maradona was laid to rest on Thursday in a cemetery outside the country's capital, Buenos Aires. Local authorities dispatched police officers to control crowds, block surrounding roads, and stand guard outside the Bella Vista Cemetery where Maradona was buried. Only Maradona's family members and a few close friends could attend the funeral. Outside the cemetery, nearby residents mourned and sang songs from their roofs of their houses. That is the news this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a pleasant evening.